It's over. That's all they wrote. And there's a lot to say and to cover, and this is just going to be a quick take. I'll do a more in-depth dive later this week. My goal really is to go back and watch the whole series from start to finish, knowing how it ends. As far as the show goes, I think I have to declare fan bankruptcy. I love the series. I love these characters and always will, despite the way it ended. Just for me, this episode went downhill from the get-go. Jon telling Tyrion it's not safe? What does he mean here? That going to talk to Dany isn't safe by herself? If that's the case, then why just moments later is he thoroughly defending her? If it's because there are possible Lannister men still around looking for vengeance, then why would Dany's men just leave her alone at one point? They follow her after the scene with Tyrion, but just decide to take a smoke break? And sure, Drogon is right outside, but he clearly doesn't care at this point. Despite the fact that we saw him come to Dany's rescue when she was being attacked back in Season 5, Episode 9. Not to mention they made it a point to show Drogon not being a fan of Jon, and there he is over the dead body of his mother, and instead of killing Jon, he just burns the Iron Throne? I've seen people say he knew the throne was what killed her. How? Drogon somehow grew a prefrontal cortex and was cognitively aware of Dany wanting to break the wheel? If they wanted to burn the Iron Throne, fine, but I think they should have had Drogon do it during Episode 5. Maybe have Dany say Dracarys, and it would have been a nice little scene from Missandei, and it would have made sense. Really, it's only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what's wrong with this episode, though. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about the death of Dany. I think everyone saw this coming. D&D love to talk about subverting our expectation, but this did anything but that. Killing Sansa would have been some subversion. Burning Tyrion right on the steps after he disrespected Daenerys in front of her entire army, that would have been subversion. We're talking about the same army that basically respawned after the Long Night. I mean, if you watch the after show with Dan and David after that episode, The Long Night, they literally say this is the end for the Dothraki, and here we are looking at, hundreds and hundreds of Dothraki soldiers. Who knows where they came from? And what about Dany's speech? She talks about freeing men, women, and children from Winterfell, Dorne, until everyone is liberated. Does she honestly think Sansa's a dictator? How can she think that when she literally just finished burning thousands upon thousands of men, women, and children? That didn't make any sense to me. Then when Jon goes to visit Tyrion and they take his sword, at first I thought that was him going to see Dany. I thought, this makes sense. They want to keep their queen safe. They aren't taking any risks. But no, it's just Tyrion. Why de-sword Jon? What in the world would make them think Jon would kill him? And again, why wouldn't they be protecting their queen like they're protecting Tyrion? Tyrion gets protected like a king and Dany gets nothing? What was the point of that? And I don't know how you felt about their conversation, but to me it felt like another meta moment, as if Dan and David were trying to justify Dany's actions to the audience. Although, one of the things I did love about this episode was Peter Dinklage. He killed it. Absolutely nailed it. I just don't think he should have made it out alive. Then when it comes to Dany trying to justify her own actions to Jon, who just earlier in the episode she gave a death stare to, and now she's happy to see, okay, maybe she's drinking her own Kool-Aid and she wants to reconcile with Jon. I can even see that. But it was a cheap way to get a shocking moment. If she's still upset with Jon, it doesn't have the emotional impact that they're going for. And really, it still didn't for me. Dany's justification, though, it didn't make sense. She says Cersei used their innocence as a weapon against me, which is true. She lined the Red Keep with women and children, but Dany spent most of her time attacking anything but the Red Keep. And Jon trying to tell Dany to forgive Tyrion when he couldn't do the same with Ollie and the other men of the Night's Watch. Quote, make them see they made a mistake. Make them understand, he says. End quote. Did Dan and David think we would forget about Jon executing people who betrayed him? I can only presume at this point because we got no after show. The final episode. Lots of questions and Dan and David are on vacation somewhere. Maybe we get that next week, and I'm sure there will be interviews. I just hope people ask fair but tough questions. I think we deserve some answers. Like, where did Drogon take Dany? Why wouldn't they show us that? Bran's like, I'll find them, but why? Why does it matter? Drogon isn't going to listen to them. He should have killed Jon and he just let him live. I thought they made it clear Drogon didn't like Jon in episode 1 of the season, when Drogon gives Jon this don't touch my mom look. As far as what happened to Jon, did he just turn himself in? Grey Worm doesn't like Jon. Twice this episode I thought they made that clear as well. And then when Jon goes to talk to Dany after the Long Night, Grey Worm stares him down as he leaves the room. Grey Worm said they were in charge, and he showed a willingness to slit the throats of men who had given up just earlier in this episode. And they didn't kill his queen. They were just trying to. He lost Missandei and now Dany, but is going to let both Tyrion and Jon live? Quote, we will decide what we do with our prisoners. End quote, he tells Sansa. At least Yara was speaking some sense. Killing Jon Snow would be justice. Why would Grey Worm essentially be waiting for them to choose a king or queen? Which is the impression I took away. His queen is gone, the same woman who gave him freedom, introduced him to the love of his life. Why would he care what some king of Westeros said? Why would the lords of Westeros care what Grey Worm had to say for that matter? Sansa even seemed to give him some respect when Davos brought up how they helped save them from the undead, but still refuses to give Dany any. Without her dragons, unsullied or not, Sansa would have been dead. I was honestly hoping Sansa wouldn't make it out alive. Not from this meeting, but the episode in the series. And the Edmure scene was just a joke to me. Felt like filler. He was always a joke. From the moment we see him, and he can't get the arrow to light his father's body on fire, to him bowing to Robb, and then when he's Jaime's captive and seems like his life doesn't matter. And then when Tyrion suggests Bran to be king, otherwise known as Branded, and definitely not the first of his name, I just couldn't believe it. Bran has done nothing this season except for give us the history behind his wheelchair and tell us the Night King is after him. That's it. Bran tells us during one of those conversations with Tyrion early on in the season that he wants for nothing and he cannot be the Lord, and that he doesn't want to rule. Tyrion even repeats those same sentiments, but then when he asks Bran if he will rule, Bran says, quote, "Why do you think I came all this way?" End quote. Which is it then? Does he want power and does he want to be king? I think in context of the show, it makes absolutely no sense. In the books, however, I do believe the Three-Eyed Raven is evil, and I made a video detailing as much. I'll link it. But again, here, it makes no sense. And Sansa says the North will never kneel again, but she doesn't specify to a king in the South. She just says they won't kneel. But at the end of the episode, we see them doing just that with her. Why not have a council with all the northern houses? A few extra lines from Sansa and it makes much more sense. But Dan and David just forgot to proofread the script. Oh, and Bran the Broken? That's the name they bestow on him? Broken? They couldn't think of anything else? Bran the Wise? Bran the Survivor? And then once again, Bran says he doesn't want to be king, even though that's the reason he came down for. Rush doesn't begin to describe it. Yeah, and why not pardon Jon? Bran's the king at this point. The Unsullied aren't a big enough force to win anymore. Even though it seems they somehow replenished their numbers, Jon could be free, although you could say he is at the end. Not to mention, what's the point of breaking the wheel when you still have a king ruling most of Westeros? You've broken no wheel at that point. All you've done is change how succession happens. That's it. Even after all that, I still got emotional when Jon was saying his goodbyes to Arya, Sansa, and Bran. It didn't really hit me until then that it was over. 10 years and countless hours, and it's finally come to an end. I may not have liked how it ended, but as I said earlier, I will always love these characters and this show. Maybe not Bronn, but maybe it's not his fault either. We could blame Dan and David for that one. And I suppose we should end this on a high note. Jon telling Night's Watch basically to fuck off and going north of the wall is something I enjoyed, at least in context of him having to go back to the Watch. They foreshadowed Jon wanting to go north after the long night. He literally tells Tormund as much. Arya becoming an explorer didn't bother me. She told the actress who saved her life that she would like to do as much, and she said earlier in the season that she wouldn't be going back north. Sansa sitting at the head of the table makes sense. Her being queen of the north, not so much, but maybe that's me nitpicking. What do you guys think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Were you neutral? I'd love to hear from you one way or the other. Thanks for listening though, and I'll see you guys next time with a more in-depth breakdown of tonight's episode.